Okay, we're diving in. We're diving in. So, hello.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, so if you want to quickly introduce yourself, you've been on the channel before and we've been on exciting adventures.
We have. We have. So I'm Maria. I run historical tours, which are theatrical walking tours telling forgotten women's stories in London. And I run one about witches, for example, the history of witch persecution, which is how I met Cheryl, actually.
Yeah.
Connected with her through that, and she came along, and one about prostitutes as well, and executions. I like to go into the dark side, as you can tell, which is why I think Cheryl invited me to come along on the adventure that we're going to talk about, to
Yeah.
the Hellfire Caves.
Well, I think that was threefold. I think Spirit was like, "You're not meant to go alone," and I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay." And then they were like, "Get Maria to go." And then, as always happens with me, there's always a deeper meaning. And as we
Mm.
were walking along, I was like, "Yeah, we're meant to bring the occult forward in bigger ways." So yeah, I love that. It was like a recce tour.
Yeah,
But yes, we went to
yeah.
the Hellfire Caves in High Wycombe, which yeah, I really wanted to speak into today because running an event tomorrow for Samhain slash Halloween, depending where you're at and what you're talking about. And I know that this whole witch persecution slash harm as healers history occult is rippling through both of us in different ways. And I think certainly for me, I can speak into the fact that only recently I decided to run a witch's karmic wheel around the witch's wheel. Now there's important portals. Everyone seems to know about Halloween, also named Samhain, winter solstice, equinoxes. There's also celebrating the moon, which is a very witch thing to do. Me personally, over the last year, perhaps the last couple, I've started to realize how these portals are harvested and taken. And
Mm.
especially, the moon, the cycles, everything. There's a part of dark forces. I know some people don't like the dark name because it has other connotations of being beautiful. That's not
Mm.
what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a very energetic force that is not for the good of humanity.
Mm.
And so I was very curious about the Hellfire Caves, and particularly that they were putting on a Halloween event, and how that they were propositioning that Halloween event, i.e., as in, the ghouls and the blood and the sacrifice that comes up around it, which comes out on all of Halloween.
Mm.
And I'm like, that ain't quite right, is it? That really ain't quite right. And I know that my first sort of campaign for justice was, mockery of witches on Halloween feels really wrong to me when I was on my first stage of reclamation. But now I'm like, yeah, witchcraft isn't all pure. So
Mm.
let's look into what's really happening.
Mhm.
Um, went straight in. And yeah, so we went to the
Nice.
Hellfire Caves together, and it was quite an experience. Uh,
Oh God,
yeah,
I'm still reeling from it, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
still just, what the hell did we just? It was so surreal, wasn't it?
and that's exactly it. Like, I'll let you share your experience afterwards. So I'll just jump into what
Yeah.
my experience was, because when you talk of surreal, for me, and I said to you inside this case, it felt like the timelines had broken. Like I felt like me and you were walking through the cave, and we
Hmm.
weren't in the same reality as everyone else that was walking through the cave.
Yeah.
And it was basically, you don't get guided, so it's an open tour. So we just went in, and there was kids in there, families taking their kids. And there was a couple of guys that we passed on the way in that I was like, oh, they seem like they might be aware there's something more here. But
Yeah.
even if you're not aware, they've got plaques up all around telling you the history, and the
Hmm.
history of, oh, there's rituals here. Oh, there's talk of sacrifice. And then there's a child's cave.
Hmm.
And then this child went missing. And then this ghost haunts it.
Hmm.
Oh, and then they were toasting the devil, and no one really knows what they did around here. And in the interim, they are showing you with mock images of what was going on back then. And I had the question, like, what do they really know? I mean, what are they putting in your face? And then you have that weird thing where you've got kids playing all around you in a dark ritual place, which was what the Hellfire Caves are. And then on top of that, if you go in as a medium, like I do, someone that's connecting with the spirit and the soul of the place, I was like, then there's another level going on that I'll speak into afterwards. But I think anybody can feel it, anybody slightly conscious. So I'd be interested to know what your experience was in that parallel world we entered.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, I said to you at the time, I think I was walking around swearing quite a lot, wasn't I? Because I was just like, what the F is this? Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but am I? I don't know. But just in utter shock at how, I mean, apparently it's not normally decorated like that. It was just decorated in that way for Halloween. But we were remarking, weren't we, on how grossly, not just inappropriate, considering the so-called rumors about the place and what went on there, which we know are not rumors, but just how, like you say, there were children, there were families there, lots of very small children running around staring at these. I mean, they were severed limbs hanging up, and there were dummies of mannequins of kids in pajamas with nooses around their necks, and just really sick stuff that would be scary anyway, like to anyone at any point, and especially for children. And I recall they were doing a scavenger hunt for half term, so a lot of the mums were bringing their kids down to do this scavenger hunt. And like you say, we were standing open mouthed most of the time, me and you, walking around going, oh my God, what is this? This is so sick. And the children and the parents were like, it was like they weren't seeing the same things we were.
Yeah, I don't feel that they were. Yeah.
Honestly, no, yeah. And I think that is it. They just weren't. They weren't on the same level as us in a way. Like they were just completely blocked off from it. But oh my God, I even if you don't believe, or you think that it's, alleged that stuff happened down there, bad stuff, it was just the most dark place. It was just horrible. Like you wanted to get out very quickly, didn't you? Because you felt really heavy and, like you were going to have a heart attack. And I mean, it's just also the place is weird. Like, why would you decide to excavate caves? I mean, the premise is that he wanted to give work to so this is Sir Francis Dashwood, who supposedly excavated these caves in order to give work to the local community. Great, how altruistic of him, how nice. Yeah, but then we also know that but honestly, these caves, they're intertwining little labyrinthine passages that don't make any sense. There's lots of little caverns, there's one that's called a children's cave. I mean, come on. And like you say, Cheryl, everything was in plain sight. Like the information boards were saying they toasted the devil, they wore robes, they
and there was the 12 apostles.
Yes.
So the 12 apostles. So basically, we'll go through the little bit of history which you're talking into, and then I'll come in on the 5D element of the spiritual stuff, which to me is the truth. So but there are the facts laid out as well. So I want to point that out, that they're there, but that there is a secret club. That's how they existed, of the 12 apostles that could go to the inner temple, which is the female anatomy shaped, as well as the child's cave. These are all what they're named symbolically. It looks like a Freemason sign to me, the way the caves have been built, but it spirals into the female center. So the female worship of some goddess, which happens a lot in witch cults, let's say. And yes, there is a reverence of the female deity, for sure. I work with a female deity. I work with the Sophia lineage. There is also a very fallen female lineage, which is very existent. And it was very present in that space. But okay, coming back to the facts, there is the 12 apostles that toast to the devil before they go into the inner temple. No one else is allowed in there. They are meant to be these beings. They are dressed as brown. It's very imagery of monks, and the one of the guys that it was the cave, he was seen as Christ. And everyone else couldn't go that further because they were seen as secondary. So it's a secret cult of so-called elite people. There was poets, there's MPs, there's there's a name which I'll be sharing in the workshop about who was part of it, and also the deeper inner temple and what that is part of from my own channelings. But that's all fact and laid out of what was there. Is there anything that you wanted to add to the history? Because when you told me about the burnt records as well, I was like,
yeah,
my gosh.
I mean, I was just, I sometimes get this, particularly with dark aspects of history. I become a bit sort of like, I want to investigate and get to the bottom of it and find out what it is. I want to, it's the Scorpio in me. I can't help myself delving into the dark side. So
you do a wonderful job of this, because this is what your tours are all about. It's like,
this is what my exactly
history,
I can't help it. I get into a detective mode and I start going down rabbit holes. So we came out of there, we'd read all the information boards. I knew a bit about the place before I went in, but not as much as I did when I came out. So then I thought, all right, I'm gonna find out what the hell is there anything on the internet about this, because of course it's going to be hidden, but there's probably hints. And that's when I found a lot of information where, of course, there are people saying, oh well, that there were rumors of sacrifice and ritual abuse, particularly abuse of women, because they brought a lot of prostitutes down there. But there was no mention of children or anything like that, because they're glossing over it. They're trying to make the way it's sort of presented is that, they were libertines, eccentrics, in the way that if you look at nowadays, a lot of what we now know are abusers that have been in the public eye, they were often presented interestingly like that, weren't they? Eccentric libertines, slightly
well, you had a brilliant, we were on the train, weren't we, and you did a dot connect for me. I love the dot connecting, because I've been to see David Icke this weekend, so I'm like all about like dot connecting. And interestingly, for my research, I'm the same. I want to know answers, so I do it like a medium of, like, what can you send me, spirit? Like, can you give me like more information, downloading these gaps in our history? And then we were saying about how that the cult has always been present. There's always been banned astrologers, banned astrology for the people, and then we have John Dee working with Queen Elizabeth. And then we're like, oh my god,
the court magician
Jimmy Savile working alongside the royals, the court magician. It was like,
makes
there we
sense.
go, again and again and again and again.
Well, exactly. And so I was sort of researching to see what information is there online about these caves. And there's I mean, it's there. I mean, I know they say it's rumors, but it's I mean, we were down there, we can see it's very obvious that, I mean, they built, for God's sake, he built a bloody river in the middle of the caves that was supposed to represent the river Styx, which is in mythology the river between the outer world and the underworld. And in order to cross that river, you go into the inner temple, which is only for the select few. And it just all of this, this really sick use of mythology. And well, more about actually what went on in perhaps in ancient Egypt and places like that, because I was of the thought that it's all inverted and been made quite perverted, but maybe it is literally what went on there.
Well, I mean, I think what was really interesting, the replications of Egypt, I really felt was the heart story.
Oh, Paul Whitehead.
Yes,
treasurer.
So he said that he wanted his heart to be left with the temple, and then and he paid for that to be given to the temple. And I was, as soon as I was reading that, I was just a bit like, Oh, it reeks of Egyptian mythology,
Mm-hmm.
where Anubis would weigh the heart, and Mayat was the cosmic justice of whether you'd lived a good life. And if you didn't, your
Mm-hmm.
soul was thrown to the crocodiles. The
Yeah.
crocodiles, read into that which you will.
Yeah.
But also, it was like the sacrifice of the heart. It was like, no, 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 no. That wasn't people controlling divine cosmic justice, because what happened after Egypt was a fall. So if there
Yeah.
really was these beautiful justice holders of divine wisdom throwing out any evil, dark hearts, we
Mm.
wouldn't be here talking about the
Yeah.
hellfire caves that happened a lot later than ancient Egypt, but they've always been these secret
Yeah.
societies.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying all secret societies are evil in nature, but I am
Mm-hmm.
saying at the top point, perhaps the 12 apostles or the 12 tribes, or the point where it gets higher and hidden and you're
Yeah.
not allowed through. What I can say from my own ability as a past life reader and a soul regressionist and a soul guide, I've been down to those spaces in plenty of lifetimes with plenty of people.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't good.
No.
It
No,
ain't
no,
good.
no. But you can feel that energy
You can
anyway.
feel
I
it,
mean,
yeah.
I'm not a medium, and I was down there just not a medium yet. I know Cheryl always reminds me to say that when I was to say
Not a medium. Okay.
yeah.
Would you like to
Well,
share any of your recent stories of?
I've never seen a ghost, never. Never, I've no idea, you know. But no, but what I mean is I'm not sort of accomplished in that really yet. And down there, you can just feel it. It's just yeah, there's a darkness down there. It's not a nice place. That's why I couldn't understand why those kids were able to run around and play quite happily down there.
And that is the disassociated soul of
Yeah.
me, that we are taught not to feel that. So I mean,
Mm.
I've always felt energy in spaces since I was tiny, and it was something I numbed out. So we are
Yeah.
taught, too sensitive, and then
Mm.
you sort of numb yourself out of it. But
Yeah.
because I work in that realm, what I could feel like, we were looking at dark patches on the wall and going, but what is that? And
Yeah.
standing in that energy and going, oh my God. And I could feel like soul fragments of all the trauma that had happened and all the
Yeah.
fear. And then there was posters that were put up like "get me out" and all of that stuff. We were like,
Can you see me?
and you
And
see,
you're next. And all
oh,
this sort of
like,
stuff.
this is so wrong. It's like, throwing people to the wolves again and again, and no
Mm,
honoring of what happened in this place. And so I was just walking around going, every soul fragment that needs to be led to the light, follow me, see the
yeah.
light. Because that's
Yeah.
what you can do as a healer and a medium, and anyone that's
Mm,
holding the light can show the way out. And it was literally, by the time I got the end, I was like, "Oh, we have to get out. I can't." It
yeah.
was like I was going to have a heart attack. There was so much pain in my heart. I
Yeah.
was like, there's only
Yeah.
so much I can do.
Absolutely.
But I
It was
was
intense.
really intense.
Oof.
And you could feel that. And it's like,
Yeah.
what bothered me more was that this was open to the public and people were ushered in there. And
Mm,
then, there was scare tactics, which kind of happens on Halloween. And it's like, that's a massive loosing of that fear energy.
yeah.
But at
Yeah.
the same time, there's a desensitization to it now, that it's just like, this is
Yeah.
what Halloween is. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all done it, dressed
Mm,
up.
of course. Yeah, no, we have. And we think it's all very, very innocuous. I mean, yeah, I've been there. Of course. I mean, I still do really like Halloween. I like this whole, but I'm starting to see it in a different way now. But I actually, because they do Fright Nights there, I
Mm.
thought I have to find out what these Fright Nights are. So I sent an email just pretending I was an interested customer, just saying, oh, could you tell me a bit about the Fright Nights and what does it involve? Is it very scary, and all this? And they replied and said, we've got, scare actors in the caves that are paid to scare you. There's a lot of blood and gore. They're reenacting murders and things. And I just thought, Jesus Christ. And then he pointed out that there's no refunds if you get too scared. That's it. Once you paid, you paid. I just thought, oh God, and I know because, people love to be scared, don't they? They love to go down into caves and be scared on Halloween. But like we've said, considering even if there's just rumors that there were deaths and murders down there. There's lots of ghost stories about them, for example, which are written on the walls. It's just so disrespectful to those souls that were lost down there. Do you know, or allegedly lost, if you think it's not necessarily true, but still, you know,
Yeah,
it's weird. And it's
and I'll speak into that, because there's no allegedly about it.
no, of course
There's
not.
lost
No, we
souls
know
down
that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because there's too much ghosting that goes on, you know, there's too much
Yeah.
that can you prove this? Is this fact? Yes. Because actually what you came across was when the guy had died, he burnt all the records so people couldn't, you know,
Yeah.
why would you do that if you've got nothing to hide?
100%. And
You know,
that is a fact. That is in fact, that's in historical record. You know, I found this very reputable source that told Paul Whitehead, but it's everywhere anyway. You know, Paul Whitehead, the treasurer, the same guy who bequeathed his heart, he spent 3 days before dying burning all the records to the club. So we've got nothing on it. So we don't know what they really did down there. And like you said, why? That you only do that when you've got something to hide.
yeah.
So
And
it's obvious.
beyond that, if you need another fact of that, Lily, was it Lily her name was, that got killed down there with the white
Suki.
Suki, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, Lily, okay, Lily's important. Okay.
Oh,
I
okay.
know. I was like, okay.
Wow.
That also was lured there because she wanted to marry this aristocrat. 3 guys got her to come in a wedding outfit and then basically stoned her to death. So
Yeah.
there is even record cases of, okay, there's killings, you know, there's problems here, there's massive problems. And that's just what you can find out, and that's just advertised there. So if one person has died in the space and you're making a mockery of that death, that's
Yeah.
strange. I mean, I've had it in Edinburgh where all the witches were died.
Yeah.
Be like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a lucky stone, and you spit in it, and then there's people dressed up as witches, and it's like, this is really twisting the sacredness of life.
Yes. Yes. 100%. That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
twisting the sacredness. Yeah.
And that isn't that, and that is part of the inverted witchcraft, which is twisting the sacredness of life, because outside the space is do what thou wilt, which Aleister Crowley made very famous.
Yeah.
But actually those words are older than him, so that means that order. Now Aleister Crowley is a famous Satanist, fact. So whatever you want to say to him about being a freedom seeker or part of the magic, he is serving that dark agenda I talk about. Do what thou wilt.
Do what you want, basically.
Yeah, do what you want.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's no protection here in this space, because once those doors are closed to the inner temple, there's no sense of justice or whatever, because there's no laws, because these are private grounds, which are blocked off quite far off, which
no accountability.
No accountability.
But that just, sorry, I know I keep mentioning Jimmy Savile, but he keeps coming to mind since we went
No,
down
mention away. I have,
because he, you know, they always talk about now, oh God, since it's been exposed what he did. Oh, well, he was, what's shocking about it is that he was never made accountable because he died, but also he had no sense of accountability anyway. He believed he was above the law, and he believed, and this is exactly what these people thought. They were all elites. They were down, like you say, down there in that temple where they were their only judge. And I think I found there was something either written on the placards, I can't remember, or I found it afterwards, where they said, Francis Dashwood, this main guy, said, my judge is no one but the devil. You know, and the fact that he said that, like, he's answering to Satan, you know, come on, that's obvious, isn't it?
And Jimmy Savile, was he born on Halloween or
born
died
on Halloween? Born tomorrow, the anniversary. Oh, God.
So
really?
No wonder he's coming up. And I actually watched something on him today that Mark Atwood had posted, and on Rumble, because he's banned off YouTube. See how long I last. But well, that's usually why the witches workshops are coming offline in sacred space, so that we can speak about what needs to be spoken into and what needs to be channeled into, because don't think that mediums haven't been shut down plenty of times for telling their truth.
Yeah.
And Duncan being it, and it's something that we've spoken about.
Yeah.
Because I had Tourette's on your tour when you were sharing.
I'm so glad you had Tourette's, Cheryl.
Yeah.
You obviously worked that in and mentioned.
Yeah, great. So you do speak about that now because we were outside the courts of justice.
Oh, I always mention it because I didn't even know that had happened. Actually, I only knew the first part of her story. I didn't know the second part. So then when I read about that and realized,
yeah. So share for people that don't know, because I'm a
yeah,
big fan of Helen Duncan and shining a light on mediums. Because you do share it on the tour.
Okay.
Which was great, and if quite a few, well, which we'll get to, because I learned Marjorie Jordan, which I'll talk into in a minute. But Helen Duncan,
yeah.
yeah.
Do you want me to share her story?
Yeah, your story, because
okay. So she was a Scottish medium, spiritualist, early 20th century, part of that revival movement, I guess. So she would hold seances and channel, and she got I don't want to, cut a long story short, but she got arrested during a seance. Now, what had apparently happened was, well, she was channeling spirits of dead wartime sailors and giving information that the authorities said was classified. So obviously that they said they thought she was a spy, so they started investigating her. They arrested her, but what the charges against her were fraud, so public order offences. They said that she'd been using, dummies and cheesecloth to recreate her ectoplasm. So she was obtaining money by false pretenses, which was
the exact opposite of what she was arrested for.
I know, it's
exactly. It's either you're either fraudulent or you're a spy.
I know.
Yeah.
It made no. Well, that's the thing, and that's the whole case really, because her trial was. It made no sense in a way, because they were saying, she was ended up being put into prison under the 1736 Witchcraft Act. So she was convicted under a Witchcraft Act, which basically stated that anyone that pretends to conjure spirits, that's illegal. So they would be imprisoned automatically as a fraud. So just like completely discounting mediums, like completely, and any form of channeling. But as you rightly pointed out, she spent 9 months in prison. She wasn't executed directly. However, when she came out of prison, she carried on practicing as a medium. And I think it was about 12 years later, 1956, she is holding another seance and she's channeling. And the police were just, they were out to get her, and they came in and arrested her in the middle of a channeling. And she died of third-degree burns caused by, because when you channel, the ectoplasm going very fast back into the body, and that killed her. So she, if you look this up, it won't say this. It will say she was obese, she was diabetic,
but she died of burn.
She died of burns. Yeah, I know.
And I felt her spirit, like when you were talking about the tour, then she was like, and she died, and we were outside the courts of justice when you do it. It's very great, but I just thought she would not have this new light. And then she died, and I was like, how did she die? Who murdered her?
Yeah. No, I'm so glad. Because that is because the case has always puzzled me, really. I always thought, what is this about? It doesn't make sense, really. But yeah, she is the last witch essentially to be killed in England. I mean, officially. Yeah, 1944. But yeah, and that is just, as you say, that is the mediums lot. It's mediums have always been shut down, and their power is very threatening. Your power is very threatening. So and I
think that's the real big reclamation that I want to do and have here, because what I've realized about witch history is that, and I've spoken to you about this before, and that's sort of kind of why I think spirit was really weaving us together, because I think this is the magic. It's like there's the history, and then the medium come in, and then it dances between those two things of the deeper stuff. And there's still facts out there for eyes to see, so it's not like this is completely I don't need it validated in the same way that people do, but I understand the world we live in, where we're trying to marry logic and spirit. I get that. I've found trusting my own spiritual channels is the only way forward, because the the mainstream knowledge lies. So, you know, even if you do check things out, you come upon quite a bit of lie. Data can be changed, converted, and things can be burnt, you know, out of the records. So, which happens a lot around the witch history, a lot, where records have just gone missing. So I don't feel we'll ever know exactly how many so-called witches were persecuted at all. And what we definitely won't know from any records is what impact that had on healers, cunning folk, and mediums, particularly, because I've been realizing lately that there's not much knowledge about it in London, and that's why I really enjoyed your tour to hear some names. But I feel like there's a big wealth of everyday people that were healers. You know, they weren't like, you know, these massive people. They work like I work today. We just float in and out, and we work with spirit, and we bring stuff through for the good of humanity. And they were all part of this debacle. So in some ways, this is the horrible side of the occult at play, because it's those in that hidden hand coming out and targeting them in particular that we need to learn to look at, because otherwise true justice isn't done about, you know, this fracturing of what witchcraft was. And actually that some were saying, yes, be careful of the devil worships, they exist. Part of my work, is part of many healers' work. You don't really find a healer that doesn't know how to deal with the harmful forces that are at play, where there is, you know, there's always this opposite. And if we don't counterbalance it, acknowledge what's there, we're in trouble.
You need to go into the dark side. You can't have dark without light, and need to expose the dark.
And suddenly my ear's ringing, my left ear. Which ear is it? Which ear is burning a lot? Which ear is it that you can't hear out of as well?
So I'm deaf in my right ear, this one.
Okay, so being it's the left, it's like you need to say something practical that's happened to you.
I do, or you do?
You do.
Something practical. What in what sense?
Part of your own story that relates to what we're talking about, the thing that comes up in your heart to speak about.
Well, well, you know how doubting I am. I'm a doubting Daisy. That's what Cheryl called me the other day.
Did I call you a doubting Daisy?
And it's very true.
I'm so sorry.
No, she's absolutely right, because I am. I've so that just always comes up whenever I meet Cheryl. Is I always feel, you know, she's such a great, it's such a great energy to be around, to remind you that magic exists. And, you know, because I think a lot of us are in the same situation. We've got one foot in the 3D world and one foot in maybe 4D or in other realms and all of this stuff. And it is quite, like you said, that's the way the world is. It is quite hard to marry up sometimes. Like everything has to be rooted in logic. And I'm surrounded by people that it's all about science and evidence, and anything else is nonsense. Anything intuitive is nonsense unless it's backed up. And so I think that does have an impact, you know, where, I mean, I've told you, haven't I, how I'm really doubting myself and doubting that magic exists, and doubting sometimes, not always, and doubting, you know, whether there is an afterlife. But then, as you pointed out,
you had the most phenomenal experience.
Crazy experiences recently that it's almost like you say, spirit has come and said, right, you need proof? Here's proof. We're going to literally put a person called Proof in front of you, just to tell you that they are proof. So I don't know if you want me to share what happened.
No, do if you'd like to, because you've had some phenomenal, beautiful things happen.
We
last met, it's like woo-hoo.
It's just, oh God. So I was walking through, probably the craziest thing, I was walking through West Brompton Cemetery, ironically going to a talk in the cemetery as part of London Month of the Dead about is there life after death. So that's, you know, quite strange in the context anyway. But I was walking along, you know, and I was rushing because I had to get there on time, and I had loads of luggage with me because I was doing a tour in the evening. So I'm walking really, really fast, and I'm not even looking around. You know, I don't look normally. I love graveyards. I will stare at all the stones and, you know, it take a long time, but I didn't have time. So I was just pelting it down. And then all of a sudden, I just glanced to my left, just very quickly, just to, I don't know, look away or something. And I saw a tomb that had my surname on it. Okay. Now, I know that doesn't sound particularly, you know, but my surname, you can see it on there, Beadle. It's quite unusual in terms of the spelling, and you don't see it very often. You often see Beadle with L-E, or you see, you know, a variation, but not very often. And so anyone that has that surname is probably related to us or our family. So I saw that and thought, that's quite, I kind of stopped and went, what the hell? And then I put everything down and quickly took a picture because I wasn't quite sure I was seeing what I was seeing. And it was a big tomb as well, you know. And then I carried on walking, and then this woman dressed all in black literally comes up to me, and she had a really nice energy, really warm. And she's like, excuse me, why are you taking pictures of that tomb? And I said, oh, because, and I explained why. And then we got chatting, and she was talking about, she asked me where I'm going. And I said, I'm going to this talk about, is there life after death? And she said, oh, do you think there is? And we got into a chat about that, where I said, well, yeah, I do actually, you know, and we were talking about that. And then she just, it was very weird because it was all like the conversation was flowing. And then she turned to me and said, I'm glad that you believe there's life after death, because there is. And then she just walked off. And the thing is, like, at the time, you know, it was just because I was rushing and I wasn't really thinking about it. But I did think, oh, that's quite cryptic and mysterious. But then I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, was she actually of the 3D realm? Or was that a ghost? Or was it a messenger of some sort? Because I feel like it was a pretty obvious messenger if it was, you know, it's blatant. She was just telling me, you know, there is. And then I told Cheryl, and Cheryl was like, for God's sake, how much more proof do you need? Because I'm like, oh no, I think she was, you know, alive and wasn't a ghost, because she looked quite alive, and I touched her, you know, at one point, you know, I just touched her. Because I'm quite tactile, not in a weird way. This sounds weird, but you know, like just brushed her. So she was there, she was physically real, but
But I think
yeah,
sometimes we need to get out of the trap that we have the answers here. Like, oh,
yeah,
so you know, there's a lot more coming to light about aliens, reptilians, astral
yeah,
dimensional beings who
yeah,
are here.
yeah,
And whilst I talk into a lot in my own work about like the fourth astral realm that is dropped and hired, and
mm,
it is the mediums and the spiritual folk and the empaths and the people that are on the awakening that can feel into that realm and acknowledge it. And so as much as there's a lot of funky juju in that room and a lot of like spirits that are fallen, there's also the access of what I call the, you know, the higher angelic kingdom. And I only mean it as a frequency. It's just a name, like the dark is just a name.
yeah,
It's whatever frequency that are working with us, earth angels and earth spirits. And
yeah,
because I chat to them so much, different kind of spirits of all realms, it's not unusual to me. So to hear that was just like, oh, yes, spirit sending you a massive sign through a
yeah,
personal being, you know, usually when it's wrapped in something quite mystical. To me, I was just like, it's just a, yeah, that's not an earthly, that's just, yeah, someone came into a messenger
yeah,
angel is what I called
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
And it, you know, I think it is quite phenomenal. And I'm grateful that you talk about all the doubt and stuff, because
mm,
you know, people need to hear that. And as much as I try and I share my own stories, because people often see me now and then they go, oh yeah, well, she would have faith. But I, you know,
yeah,
actually only this morning, I've had quite a tough personal week. And so I was just feeling like a bit at the end of my tether, and had a wonderful session with my sister, who's such a good mentor of all people, because she's just got this great logic and will and gets you going when you're giving up essence to her. But she said to me, you know, you shouldn't do too much of the 3D realm because your superpower is so big in this spiritual realm.
Yeah.
Don't, some people transverse the worlds, but actually just stay there most of the time, because this is your superpower.
Yeah.
And it's like you've been given dyslexia, just to remind you, don't try and fight this realm because it's not your realm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but don't think I haven't transitioned that way through all of those sort of doubting and no, it's not real, send me a big sign. And then spirit did send me big slaps in the face, like, well, here's your nan in the physical.
Yeah.
Okay, can you doubt it now? And I think that's the real sadness and danger, and why I want to bring justice, true justice for witches. If you want to use that name, once again, names fail us because witches are so many things, of the dark and of the light. And I really acknowledge that. But the true justice I'm talking about is for mediums and for the soul's truth, and for the angelic kingdom that's trying to come through and work with us, and for the higher good of humanity, because humanity has been harmed. And that's what I really felt in the Hellfire Caves.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think it's really, you're the only person I've heard personally talking about the dark magic, because it's interesting, actually. You made me think as you were talking there. Last night on my tour, I had a guy on the tour. It always happens to me on tours. I think their messages come through this work often. It's honest, I think this is why I'm doing it. But this guy asked me, he said, the witches, can you tell me, was magic real? Were they actually doing magic? And were they sometimes doing bad magic? And he just came out with that, and so I thought, oh wow, he's really, so I started telling him, and very much thankfully informed by you, because I think there would have been a time when I would have said, because if you read a lot of the paraphernalia on witches and the research, it says, no, they weren't doing magic. Magic doesn't exist. They were ordinary working class women who were persecuted just for being them. And yes, of course, that was true in some instances, but there were people doing this work. They were doing magic. Of course, it exists. I mean, Elizabeth I had Dr. John Dee doing magic, and there's different types of magic. So that's what I was explaining to him, that of course there's dark magic and there's white magic and everything. And he was just sort of, he was really interested in hearing that. And I thought, that's interesting. He asked me that because it's almost like I was reaffirming my knowledge and belief in it.
Yeah.
As as I was telling him. So
I have an interesting fact for you.
Yeah.
I was doing a bit of a witch's wheel today.
Oh, yeah.
Planned for my Samhain thing tomorrow. And I will say, one question that came up massively, and I just want to speak into this: what happened to the children when they killed them as witches, all of them women?
What happened to them?
Yeah.
What, as in, how were they killed?
So loads of women were killed as witches.
Oh, you mean they're orphan children?
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, I often wonder that myself. Like Joan Peterson, she had kids. What happened to her kid? Were they killed too? I don't want to think they were killed too. Were they? We don't know.
I had the question, but I'm going to go more into that tomorrow. But what I did find out was, because so I'm talking into Sarah Spindler and Matthew Hopkins. Sarah Spindler, for people that don't know, is the protagonist in my play Awaken. And yeah, it's taken me on a big journey. And actually I was sitting there going, why Sarah Spindler? Why Berry? What is more interesting? We've talked about Manning Tree, and I've actually done a meditation a long time ago about that tree. And I didn't realize, I'd sort of channeled that witches had hidden there and what it was like to be in there. And you were saying that actually was a place that they went to. So we're going to go there. But I found out about George Pickingill.
Oh, he's not the assistant for Matthew Hopkins, is he? Now that name.
No. He was.
No, that was John Stern. Sorry.
Yes, John Stern, and he was a cunning man.
Yeah.
And he didn't get touched, and they were like, oh, being he was going on this rampage, he was missed. And then there was more research done into it. And apparently he was heading up quite a few covens.
Oh.
So I was like, what keeps getting missed out of history is that it's the untouchables
Yeah.
that were weaving through the occult the whole time, the untouchables, let's call them. And
Yep.
then there was the other folk, which was accused of witches. But what is getting missed when you look at what really was happening in history, and look now as well, is that magic, mediumship, healers, spiritual people exist. They don't just exist now and all speaking out about platforms. We always did.
Yeah.
So we've got the mediums and the healers and the spiritual folk who also, no doubt, and this is what I keep channeling, were speaking out about what was really happening over here.
Yeah.
And then you get loads of laws and murders happening over here of the people that, why, you know, and then we get the silencing. They were just misaccused people, so we won't look into that any further. We'll get an apology, because of course it's wrong to murder anybody, absolutely. But if we never find out what really happened, it means that history can repeat.
And, you know, and it continues where, because the easiest way to silence someone is to just take away their credibility. We see that happening with powerful figures like, you know, politicians, etc. They just get smeared as being, you know, not non-credible. And that's what they've done with the mediums. And that's why, you know, lots of people, it's so sad. People just say, oh, I don't really believe in it. You know, it can be explained by science. You know, it doesn't exist. It's a load of nonsense, ashes to ashes, whatever people say. It's really, I think it's quite sad, because I get asked all the time. I mean, I do ghost tours as well, and I get asked all the time, yeah, but do they really exist though? You know, do you really believe in it? I mean, you know, and then we always have these discussions, because I think people do want to believe it. A lot of people, they want to believe that it exists, but there's so much around us all the time saying, I mean, I mentioned to you, didn't I, that I had a lady saying to me, oh, but you know what mediums do? They do something called constellation theory. And I went to a talk about it, and it's all reading your cues and blah, blah, blah. And she was trying to explain it like that. And I just said, but that doesn't make sense, because I've had mediums tell me stuff completely unsolicited, and I've not been paying them. They've just literally come up to me and told me something that they couldn't possibly know. You know, a private conversation between me and my dad when he died, which was like 20 years ago. How could they know that? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I said to you, I was like, you know, maybe, you know, I get that people go, oh, they're reading your behavior. But most of my channelings happen offline, you know, that you know, I'm not with the person. And when I'm doing it, I'll be off screen, they'll be off screen. And I, you know, sometimes I don't even, lots of the work I do, I'm not even physically there with someone.
Exactly.
You know, I do soul readings. That's part of mediumship. So it's like, if you're going to be a doubting Daisy about your life, like go and speak to like mediums and how they really work. And like, you know, I know that a lot of them have been, you know, tested time and time again. There's like this need to pull the medium down. And I speak about that passionately because of my great grandfather. You know, he got thrown fraudulent and ended up getting done out of his business in his lifetime. And it was like, in his own words, he was like, I'm not Lucifer, I'm just trying to get you closer to spirit, because
that's what they don't want. That's where mass gaslighting and scapegoating happens. It's because I think if we realize that we can, what we are and what we can do, then there's no control. They've got no control over us. And this is it. You know, this is what it's about.
Interestingly, that's what David Icke said at his talk in Luton. It was very much thing.
Channeling David Icke now.
Channeling David Icke, which is also what got us to the Hellfires Cave in the first place, because I'd watched his documentary that was aired last Halloween, and a medium and himself and
sorry, just plugging in my computer.
Yeah, sure.
I'm still with you. I'm still with
You're
you.
there, spirit.
My battery's about to die.
They went to visit the caves and started some work and did it's an amazing documentary on Iconic channel. I'm a big fan of the seed that he's started. And right at the end, the medium said, yeah, there's more work to be done. But I felt like, you know, they'd started something, and we went, I felt that call. I was like, I need to go and finish what they started. got there and really felt that they'd had done a lot of work. So it was like just fragments picking up. And we, you know, when we left the caves, we had this beautiful moment of going up the hill and the sun came out, didn't it? And it was like,
Yeah.
so beautiful. We were both ravenous. We just sat there,
Yeah.
had a look at the crazy, what was it? What was the name of the building we were sitting outside?
Oh, the mausoleum to
That's it.
Joshwood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dyslexic in me was like, I can't pronounce that word.
Yeah. Oh, that was amazing. It was almost like, yeah, because we went in, it wasn't particularly sunny when we went in the caves, and it was so dark and cold down there. And then we come out and it was, like you say, blue skies, really warm.
Yeah.
It
And it
was, yeah,
felt
it
like
felt
so much had
light.
lifted.
Yeah.
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 Beautiful view. And it just felt like some sense of justice was done where
Yeah.
you witness. And that's kind of why I talk into these things. It isn't to upset or disrupt, it's to heal.
Yeah.
Most importantly. And if we can't heal what we can't see or sense, or that's buried, you know, we can't heal that we don't face. That's how you face trauma. That is soul integration work. Once you see it, you witness it. And as my sister reminded me today, knowledge is power. So what we know, we can change. And, you know, for me, it just feels like if we're going to get any kind of true justice for witches, for mediums, and most importantly, children of satanic abuse, we have to look at things from a multidimensional angle, because it's not out there on our internet, because the truth is, you know, it's hidden. It always has been.
And I don't really understand why, because we know paedophiles exist. We know that this kind of stuff has been exposed. I mean, sorry, going to bring up Jimmy Savile again, but it's been exposed, right? Like via someone like him, so important. So, you know, and I just find it strange how it's all just poo-pooed as nonsense. Like, you know, oh, we've got no evidence for this, but we have. It's just that you're not. I think I think I was saying this to you. There's such cognitive dissonance. I don't know if that's even the right word, but it's too difficult for people to comprehend. It's too painful. It's too awful that they can think this kind of thing is happening underneath our feet, actually, most of the time, all the time. And I think that is why people don't want to face it, because it's such a darkness, you know. It's
but I just don't feel that as a collective we can get into this, like this higher realm where there's still suffering in the world. And the thing is, what I've found, and I find this a massive piece of faith and hope, is when I realized that humanity's been programmed and targeted to turn against each other, and the natural way of being as a human is to love.
And to
so
be together.
It's a dropped consciousness, and you have to really target the mind and the soul and the spirit, and cut off any connection for human beings to behave in ways that are sacrificial and harmful. And that doesn't make it okay. I'm not saying it's okay, but I'm just saying that our natural spiritual template is this divine love. And so to get back to that, we have to witness everything that isn't, and to see where it's truly coming from, so that we don't go around and around and around and around. So I know that that's not easy, but it is why I do quite a bit of the work I do, to support that, because I witnessed my own truth. I've seen child sacrifice in my soul's lineage. You know, I've seen blood rituals. I've witnessed them a lot. So while I've talked out a lot about past life killings as a witch, I've also seen the other side of sacrifice. So it's like, I'm certainly not going to ghost my own soul.
Oh God, no. Scapegoat yourself.
It's like there's
gaslight yourself.
I'm not gaslighting, Shez.
No, Jesus Christ. And that's what we're all doing, gaslighting our own souls, really. Being programmed to.
That's exactly the word, being programmed to. And so part of my work is unprogramming the false programs in the soul to collect any fragments back. And so we'll be doing a lot more of that tomorrow on Samhain. It's going to be quite a healing activation, and it is going to be talking into these spaces and also journeying into them, because what my truth isn't necessarily yours. I mean, what I find with most people I work to one, they experience stuff that I'm like, I get it. I've witnessed all of that in my souls, because you know, it's a big old collective. This has happened all down our centuries. So
Yes.
somewhere
Yes.
along your soul line, there's going to be some targeting, because there always is and was. But
Yeah.
it's witnessing, releasing, and having a really honest conversation and sacred space for the healing to occur. But also why I work with Eimear, who brings, I said we kind of are working with the sacred and the sacrifice energy and bringing them up to be re-healed. So yes, so that is going to happen tomorrow and keep happening on these portals. Let me know what you're up to, because obviously Samhain, Halloween's a big night for you too.
Yeah, well, all of this month, I mean, it's just been manic. I don't normally do this many tours, but this is when everybody wants to go on scary or dark tours, don't they? Or do dark events. So in a way, that's good for me, you know, in terms of business and money, etc. But it's also exhausting because it is an intense time. I mean, it's also astrologically, we've got lunar eclipses and solar eclipses. I'm really feeling this intensity. It's like, whoa. And then going into this darkness. So tomorrow I've got a witch tour, as you know, of course it has to be on Halloween, so I'll be doing that. And
you have a jail, and is a jail one a newer one?
Oh yeah, so I do one called Jailbird. So that's the one I did last night, which is about women criminals in the 1800s in London, how they were treated by the justice system, what happened to them. And that's a newer one, yeah. So I'm still sort of trying to get that off the ground a little bit, but it's been popular this month because it's about death, isn't it? But actually, you just
I'm going to come along to it.
Yeah.
And,
you just made me think of what has been going around my head lately related to us going down to the caves, which is why are we so seduced by fear? I mean, I don't know if this is a psychological thing or we've been programmed, because I mean, we talked a bit about this, didn't we, about Halloween and how it's been twisted round scare, and you know, the fright nights down in the caves and horror films and all of this. We're always programmed, aren't we, to find to be seduced by this. It's
I mean, I have a slightly different take on it. I feel that it's not that I think we're so used to the fear state, but there's also this numbing of society, and that's what I saw in the faces of everyone down in those caves, apart from those two gorgeous guys who walked out, that I was just a bit like, they were here for a different reason. Spirit sent them to me to go, you know, there are people awake down here. And what I saw, and this is a sign of soul loss, is sort of dead eyes with people. It's just like kind of like that. And I started that on my acting journey. I remember the director said to me, it's like your eyes have woken up again. And so most of humanity, and I was at the same, you know, it's just like we get through the day, we live, we drink to medicate, we do something. So that sense of fear is associated with aliveness. So it's actually more about, I want to feel something. And it's actually not fear we want to feel. We want to feel connected and love and spirit and support and the light. But because we're not feeling and we're programmed with soul loss, it's part of, like, you know, I mean, the agenda weaves in so many different ways that it's actually, that need to feel. And so that scare gives us an adrenaline jump or something. And that's how it seduces us. I really don't feel like we actually want to feel fear, but because it sells, you know, and it sells because we've been marketed to believe that's what we want to feel, when really we want to feel that and you know, once you've trained it in your body, that's why I was like, I got to get out of the cave, because I'm just taking in that anxiety and that fear state, and I need to release it up because I want to feel the light and the connection and the love. And that's what happened when we went uphill. Led all that and then released it, and then it was like, I'm back to the pure state.
100%. Yeah, because it's fear, and I think activates the same hormones or whatever you want to say as arousal or as excitement from a positive experience. So both of those are the same. And like you say, I think we're so used to it, and we've been so programmed that is how we feel. It's through negative extreme emotions like fear,
which feeds them,
which feeds the darkness and the dark agenda. But actually what we need to feel, but we need to feel in what we should be feeling is in love and in positive senses. So no, it's just a thought that was
No,
bandied
really,
around,
really
particularly
valuable
over
thought.
Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also valuable to witness that, like I got that calling, we went to the cave, and it wasn't easy. We had to go on this big march and then got to
Yeah.
go down there. We were both feeling, God, this energy is
Yeah.
intense. And so
Oh
it wasn't we're just, a floaty state.
yeah.
Actually, I think there's a way to do it consciously that's really powerful. It was like, oh, let's witness what really is going on here. And then
Mhm.
we had a lot of beautiful sister giving us protection energy and were with us.
Yeah.
And then it was like going up and going, and now we need to nourish,
Mhm.
so it was like working with that, because what I never want to advocate is bypassing the, oh, just don't go to the caves, or don't go on the tours, avoid it completely. I'm saying go and learn and get
Yeah.
activated, but do it in
Yeah.
a conscious way,
Mhm.
because what I was witnessing there was like a parallel of, this is what really happened here, but we're going to mock it, and you're
Yeah.
not going to know that, so you're buying into it and you're feeling odd, but no one's going to speak about it. So,
Mhm.
and then everyone's just going to numb out and go, well, don't be so silly, and oh, that's not real, so there's a big old ghosting and masking and ghosting and masking, and I'm saying step into it, um and then understand it, and when you feel the anxiety, and then release it, heal it, witness what it's triggered for you, because it will have triggered.
I've lost you. Oh, you've come back now. Okay. You'd
Oh,
frozen. You froze, you literally froze doing that at that
wow.
moment. That was interesting. Yeah.
Wow, what did you
Yeah.
miss?
You said no, because I started speaking then. I don't think I
Ah,
missed you saying. I don't know
okay,
what you were you saying something at that point. I don't know.
I don't know, they were like
Yeah, no, because you were saying about the numbing, going down in the caves and being numb to it,
yeah,
and like they were mocking it, and which they
yeah.
were.
So I think the most important thing I want to say is you just got to feel it to heal it. Um,
Yeah, feel it to heal it. That could be the new slogan.
yeah,
Yeah.
I use that a lot. Feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
Then also honor it. So
Yeah.
honoring at this time of Samhain, Halloween, to honor what actually happened is the most powerful thing that you can do, to people that have seen the very fallen side of it. To honor, like, I see you, I witness it. It's not okay, and it's unacceptable, and actually we need to change this
Yeah.
whole paradigm.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. God,
Is there
feels like we've
anything
got a long
you'd
way
like
to
to?
go.
Yeah, it does feel like we have a way to go, doesn't it? But we are a tribe, and
Yeah.
so thank you for speaking into this,
No,
um
thank you for
because
inviting it. Yeah.
yeah, it was amazing to go, and we'll probably be back talking about more magical occult tours that might come in the
Yeah.
future. Let's see, watch this
Oh,
space.
yeah. Oh, definitely. I think
Yeah,
there is a gap there.
yeah, there is
Definitely.
a definite gap in London, and yeah, let's,
Yeah. And
oh,
just giving credibility to this magic and these mediums, because there's just so much dismissing of it.
mm,
It's everywhere, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's to be, yeah, justice needs to be done.
exactly, boom.
Yeah.
And
Boom,
on
boom.
that note, justice will be done. That is,
Justice will be done. Oh, look
justice will
at
be
us
done in the
go.
name of witches, mediums,
Yeah.
and healers.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mic drop moment. Yeah.
So yeah, come join the tribe of the witches wheel and the karmic wheel. Myself and Eimear, I'll drop that in the chat, and I'll drop
Fantastic.
your beautiful tours, and come and join you for jailbirds
Jailbirds of old London. Yeah,
of London,
do.
and see what activates, because I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I've been in jail a few times for
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
for
Yes.
being a
Being
healer, for
executed.
being, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I know you can handle that anyway. Is your,
Yeah.
you know,
Big old activation on the land. Let's go.
exactly 100%. Oh, thank you for that. That was a great chat as always.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.